Maya sat quietly on one of the cold steel chairs at the crowded airport terminal. Her small nylon bag clutched tightly to her chest. The bag held everything she owned in the world. An old CV she had rewritten 100 times. A file of rough sketches she had drawn on pieces of paper she found on the streets. And a crumpled boarding pass she had guarded like treasure. Her clothes were worn out, her shoes almost falling apart, and her hair roughly packed back into a bun. But despite her ragged appearance, there was a strange glow in her eyes, the glow of hope. She had saved for months. Every single coin she had begged for. Every naira people dropped into her tin while she sat at the roadside. She had refused to eat some days, just so she could put money aside. Finally, she had enough to buy a one-way ticket to Enugu. Maya kept glancing at the big electronic clock on the wall. The time was rushing toward 10 a.m. Her heart pounded. The interview notice had come unexpectedly the day before. A last-minute invitation from one of the biggest architectural firms in Enugu. She had almost cried when she read the email at a cybercafe. It was her first real chance after so many years of rejection. She couldn't miss it. Not now. Not after all she had endured. The boarding call was announced. People stood up, some pulling their designer luggage, others chatting with family on the phone. Maya followed them nervously, holding her small nylon bag like it was made of gold. She joined the line at the gate, trying to stay calm. When she reached the air hostess, the woman's eyes narrowed at her appearance. "Boarding pass?" the hostess asked, raising a perfectly arched brow. Maya handed it over with trembling hands. The hostess looked at the boarding pass, then at Maya's torn sandals, then back at the pass. "Where is your luggage?" This is all I have," Maya whispered, lifting her nylon bag slightly. The hostess frowned. "Madam, are you sure you can afford this flight? Where did you even get this ticket?" "I bought it," Maya said quickly, her voice shaking. "Please, I need to get to Enugu today. I have an interview by noon. Please." But the hostess's face turned cold. She looked Maya up and down with disgust and shook her head. "I'm sorry, but you cannot board this flight. This is not a bus park. We cannot allow just anyone. Please, don't do this to me," Maya begged, her eyes filling with tears. "I worked hard for this ticket. Please." The people in line started staring. Some whispered, some sneered. A man in a suit shook his head and muttered, "These are the kind of people who embarrass themselves." Maya's chest tightened. She felt the world closing in on her. The hostess stepped aside and motioned for security. "Escort this woman out." Maya's knees felt weak. Her chance, her only chance, was slipping away right before her eyes. She wanted to scream, to fight, but the shame weighed her down. Then, just as the security guard moved forward, a deep voice cut through the noise. "Wait!" Everyone turned. From the first-class section of the line, a tall man in an expensive suit walked forward. His presence was commanding, his face sharp yet kind. His wristwatch gleamed, his shoes polished, but it was his calm confidence that silenced the crowd. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked the hostess, his tone polite but firm. "This woman," the hostess said with a scoff, "claims she has a ticket, but look at her. She can't possibly." "She has a ticket," the man interrupted, taking the boarding pass from Maya's trembling hand and glancing at it. "And it's valid. So what exactly is the problem?" The hostess faltered. "Sir, it's just that she doesn't look like she belongs here," the man finished, his eyes narrowing. The hostess shifted uncomfortably. "Well, yes." A silence fell. Maya stared at the man, her tears threatening to fall. Why was he standing up for her? The man sighed and turned to Maya. "Come with me." But the hostess quickly stepped forward. "Sir, first-class passengers are not allowed to bring." The man cut her off again. "If she cannot board this flight, then neither will I." Gasps filled the air. Everyone knew who he was now. Richard Roberts, billionaire architect, the owner of Roberts and Company, and one of the most powerful men in the country. His face was often on magazine covers, his name constantly in business news. Without another word, Richard pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and said calmly, "Prepare the jet. We leave in 30 minutes." The hostess froze. The security guard stepped back. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Richard gently guided Maya away from the gate. Maya could barely breathe. She walked beside him like a shadow, her mind spinning. Private jet? Who was this man? Why would he do this for her? Minutes later, they were seated in a luxurious private jet. Maya sat stiffly, her nylon bag clutched on her lap, afraid to touch anything. The leather seats, the polished tables, the soft hum of the engines. It was all too much. Richard sat across from her, studying her quietly. "So," he said finally, "where are you going in such a hurry?" Maya swallowed hard. "Enugu. I have an interview at noon." "An interview?" Richard leaned forward with interest. "With which firm?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Roberts and Company." Richard raised his brows slightly but said nothing. Instead, he asked, "And what position are you applying for?" "Architect," Maya said, her voice trembling. I studied architecture. I used to design. I still draw. But..." Her words broke, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Life hasn't been kind." Richard's voice softened. "Tell me." And so she told him. She told him about her abusive partner, David, who had once been her whole world. How he grew cold, how he cheated openly, how he threw her out one rainy night when she was pregnant, choosing another woman over her. How she had begged him for mercy, but he slammed the door in her face. How she lost the pregnancy days later because of the stress. With no family, no home, and no money, Maya had been forced onto the streets. She begged to survive, slept under bridges, ate scraps. Yet even there, she clung to her dreams. She drew buildings in the dust, on old papers, on napkins strangers dropped. Her hands never forgot how to create, even when her stomach ached with hunger. As she spoke, tears slid down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, ashamed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know why I'm telling you all this." Richard reached across the table and gently took the file from her nylon bag. He opened it and began to look through her sketches. The silence stretched as he turned page after page. His eyes narrowed, his lips pressed together. "These are good," he said finally, lifting his gaze to hers. "Very good." Maya blinked in surprise. You think so?" "I know so," Richard said simply. "I'm an architect too, and I own one of the biggest firms in the country. I know talent when I see it. And you, Maya, you are talented." Maya covered her mouth with her hands, her chest tightening with a mixture of disbelief and hope. For so long, nobody had seen her. Nobody had believed in her. And now, this stranger, this billionaire, was saying the words she had longed to hear. As the jet soared into the clouds, Maya stared out the window, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, the world didn't look so dark. For the first time, she dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, her story was not over yet. The jet landed smoothly on the Enugu runway just before 11 a.m. Maya's heart raced as the aircraft slowed down. She couldn't believe she had just traveled on a private jet. The sound of the engines quieted, and soon the door opened to reveal the bright Enugu sunshine. Waiting on the tarmac was a gleaming black limousine. A chauffeur in a crisp suit stood beside it, bowing slightly as Richard and Maya descended the stairs. Maya froze. A limousine? For her? She looked at Richard, but he only smiled gently. "Come on," he said, guiding her forward. Inside, the limo smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Maya sat nervously, holding her nylon bag against her lap even though her sketches now rested in Richard's briefcase. She kept her eyes low, but her mind was racing. She thought of the streets, the hunger, the nights she had prayed under a bridge. Now here she was, sitting in a car most people only saw in movies. Richard broke the silence. "So, where exactly is this interview of yours?" Maya hesitated before replying, her voice soft. "At Roberts and Company." Richard chuckled. A deep, amused laugh that startled her. She looked up quickly. Why are you laughing?" He leaned back against the leather seat, still smiling. "Because, Maya, I am Richard Roberts, and Roberts and Company is my firm." Her jaw dropped. What?" "Yes," he said casually. "You're going to be interviewed at my company. Funny how life works, isn't it?" Maya's heart thudded wildly. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You mean you're the one?" Her voice trailed off, too overwhelmed to continue. Richard tilted his head, studying her. "Do you know what this means?" She shook her head quickly, panic in her eyes. "It means I won't get the job. You already know me. The others will think I cheated, that you gave me the position out of pity." Richard smiled at her earnestness. "Relax. I'm not going to interfere. You'll go in like every other applicant. You'll face the panel. You'll prove yourself. Whether you get the job or not will depend on you, not on me." Tears burned behind her eyes. For the first time, someone powerful wasn't trying to use her or buy her. He wanted her to stand on her own. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Richard glanced at his watch. "But first you need a change of clothes. You can't walk into Roberts and Company in these." His eyes flickered to her faded gown and worn sandals. Maya looked down, ashamed. She had tried her best to stay neat, but there was no hiding her poverty. The limousine pulled up in front of a high-end boutique. The glass doors gleamed, and mannequins in elegant suits stood proudly on display. Maya froze. I can't go in there," she said quickly. "I don't belong in such a place." Richard gave her a firm look. "You belong anywhere your dreams take you. Come." He stepped out first and held the door for her. Reluctantly, Maya followed. Inside, the boutique sparkled. Rows of tailored suits, polished shoes, silk blouses, and handbags lined the shelves. The sales attendants looked up in surprise, their eyes sweeping over Maya's ragged clothes. One of them whispered something to another, and they giggled. Richard's commanding voice cut through the air. "Bring me your best corporate wear for women. Now." The attendants scrambled at once. In minutes, Maya stood in a fitting room, staring at her reflection. She wore a sleek black suit, crisp white blouse, and polished heels. Her hair had been brushed neatly, and the suit hugged her figure perfectly. She gasped. Is that really me?" Richard appeared behind her in the mirror. "Yes, Maya, that's you. The architect, not the beggar. This is who you've always been." Her eyes filled with tears again. For years, she had forgotten what it felt like to look human, to look worthy. Now, for the first time, she felt powerful. They left the boutique, and Richard paid without flinching at the price. Maya wanted to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. Gratitude overwhelmed her. By the time the limousine pulled up at Roberts and Company, it was already close to noon. Maya's hands shook as she stepped out. The building rose tall in the heart of town, glass windows reflecting the sunlight, bold letters spelling out, "Roberts and Co. Architects." It was magnificent. People streamed in and out, dressed smartly, carrying files and laptops. Maya's knees trembled. Richard placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Go in. Face them. Show them who you are. When you're done, come to my office with the verdict." She nodded, inhaled deeply, and walked toward the glass doors. Inside, the receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning. How may I help you?" Maya swallowed hard. I'm here for the interview. Maya Johnson." The receptionist tapped on her computer, then nodded. "Yes, Ms. Johnson. Please have a seat. You'll be called shortly." Maya sat down, her heart pounding. She clutched her file tightly, trying to calm her breathing. Around her, other candidates looked sharp, confident, polished. Some glanced at her and smirked. She lowered her eyes, reminding herself of Richard's words. "This is who you've always been." Soon, her name was called. She entered the interview room, where 4 panelists sat behind a long table. Their expressions were serious, their eyes sharp. "Good afternoon, Miss Johnson," one of them said. "Let's begin." The questions came fast. They asked about her studies, her work experience, her design concepts. They tested her knowledge of structures, sustainability, and modern trends in architecture. At first, Maya's voice trembled, but then something inside her shifted. She remembered the nights she had drawn buildings by candlelight, the afternoons she had sketched while hungry, the years she had dreamed of creating structures that touched lives. Passion filled her words. Confidence replaced fear. When they handed her a sheet of paper and asked her to sketch a quick design for a proposed community center, her hands flew across the page. Lines became walls, walls became halls, halls became dreams. She looked up finally, and the panelists were nodding. One of them whispered to another. Maya left Richard's office that afternoon with her appointment letter clutched in her hand like a prize. She couldn't stop smiling. After years of pain and humiliation, she finally had something no one could take away from her. A job she earned with her own sweat, her own talent. When she stepped into the elevator, she leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. The scent of polished floors, the sight of neatly dressed employees walking with confidence, all of it felt unreal. A week ago, she had been on the street, begging for scraps. Now, she was part of a world she thought she had lost forever. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and she spotted Richard waiting for her near the lobby. "How did it go?" he asked, though his smile told her he already knew the answer. "I got it," Maya whispered, still holding back tears. I really got it. Richard chuckled and gave a small nod. I knew you would. They walked out together, the late afternoon sun glowing against the glass walls of the firm. As the limousine door opened for them, Richard asked, Have you made any plans on where you'll stay here in Enugu? Maya's smile faltered. She looked down at her hands. No. I don't have anyone here. I thought maybe I'd find a cheap lodge or something small. I don't even know. Richard studied her for a moment, then pulled out his phone. He dialed quickly and spoke in his usual calm but commanding voice. Yes? Get me a safe, fully furnished bungalow in a decent neighborhood. Something ready for immediate move-in. I'll be there in an hour. Maya's head shot up, her eyes wide. Richard, no. Please, I can't let you do that. You've already done too much for me. He raised a brow. Maya, you can't go back to sleeping under bridges, not after all this. You need a safe place. Consider it an investment in your future. Architects need peace of mind to create. You'll pay me back one day, if you must. But for now, let me do this. Her throat tightened. Gratitude burned in her chest. But so did fear. She didn't want to depend on another man again. But the sincerity in his eyes reassured her. Richard wasn't like David. He wasn't trying to control her. He was giving her space to rise. Thank you, she whispered. The limousine drove them to a quiet neighborhood lined with trees and neat houses. Children rode bicycles down the street, laughter filling the air. A real estate agent was waiting outside a charming bungalow with cream-colored walls and a red roof. This way, sir, madam, the agent said, smiling politely. Maya stepped inside slowly, her sandals brushing against the tiled floor. The house smelled faintly of fresh paint. The living room was bright, with wide windows letting in golden sunlight. A soft sofa sat in the corner, and a dining table stood ready in the center. She walked through the rooms one by one. A small but cozy kitchen with cabinets, a bedroom with a neat bed already made, a bathroom with gleaming tiles. Her steps grew slower as tears blurred her vision. She turned to Richard, her voice trembling. This is too much. It's beautiful. I don't deserve this. Richard stepped closer, his expression firm. Maya, don't ever say that again. You deserve safety. You deserve peace. You deserve a place to call home. Her lips trembled, and finally, the tears spilled over. She covered her face with her hands, her body shaking as years of pain poured out. Thank you, she whispered through sobs. Thank you, Richard. You've given me back my life. Richard placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. No, Maya. You took your life back the moment you refused to give up on your dreams. I'm only opening the door. The rest is yours to walk through. The agent, sensing the emotion of the moment, quietly excused himself. The keys are yours, madam. Congratulations. He handed them over and stepped outside. Maya held the keys tightly in her palm, still crying softly. Richard gave her a small smile. Come, there's one more thing. Confused, she followed him outside. A sleek, brand-new car was parked in the driveway, its silver paint gleaming in the fading sunlight. A car dealer leaned casually against it, waiting. Maya froze. Richard. He walked forward, took the keys from the dealer, and pressed them into her hand. This is yours. You'll need it to get to work. Her mouth fell open. She shook her head wildly. No, no, no. I can't accept this. A house is already too much. But a car? Richard, please. This is too much. Richard chuckled softly. Maya, relax. It's not charity. It's practicality. You have a demanding job now. You can't be struggling with buses and taxis every morning. Consider this part of your new beginning. Maya stared at the shiny car through tear-filled eyes. She had dreamed of owning a car once, back in school, when she and her classmates would talk about the future. But life had stolen those dreams. She had never thought she would stand before her own car one day. She looked at Richard, her voice breaking. Why are you doing all this for me? Richard's expression softened. Because sometimes, life takes everything from people who don't deserve it. And sometimes, someone needs to step in and remind them that they still matter. You matter, Maya. Her knees almost gave way. She leaned against the car, sobbing quietly. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Richard said gently. Just live. Just build. Just be the architect you were born to be. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Maya stood there, holding the car keys, the house keys, and her fragile heart. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about survival. She was thinking about tomorrow. That night, after Richard left, Maya lay in the bed of her new home. The sheets were soft against her skin. The roof didn't leak. The doors locked. The silence was safe, not threatening. She stared at the ceiling for hours, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered into the darkness, "God, is this really my life now? Am I really free?" She clutched her pillow, her heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time in so long, she dared to believe she wasn't cursed. She dared to believe she could be happy. And somewhere in the city, Richard sat in his study, sipping tea and staring out at the skyline. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt peace knowing Maya was safe tonight. He had helped countless people in his life, but something about her was different. She wasn't just another good deed. She was something more. Maya's first week at Roberts & Company felt like stepping into another universe. Each morning, she slipped into one of the corporate outfits Richard had insisted she buy, combed her hair neatly, and drove her new car through the buzzing streets of Enugu. She would park in the company's underground garage, still shocked that she had a spot reserved for her, and then walk into the magnificent glass building with her head held high. Every time she pressed her ID card at the security scanner, a small smile tugged at her lips. The sound of the beep was a reminder. She belonged here now. Her colleagues eyed her curiously at first. They had seen the news. Blogs and gossip pages had already carried the story. Billionaire Richard Roberts saves homeless woman, offers her new life. The headlines painted her as a lucky beggar who had stumbled into fortune. Some whispered behind her back, saying she was Richard's mistress. Others sneered that she would not last a month. But when Maya presented her first architectural proposal at a staff meeting, the whispers died. She stood before the boardroom, her sketches projected on the large screen. Her hands shook at first, but when she began to explain her design, a community library that doubled as a safe space for children, her voice grew stronger. She spoke with passion, describing not just walls and roofs, but light, safety, and hope. She showed how her design allowed sunlight to spill into reading halls, how gardens would surround the building to give children a sense of calm. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly, the board members nodded. One of them murmured, "Brilliant." Another said, "Fresh ideas. We need this energy." Even the skeptics had to admit, Maya wasn't just a charity case. She was talented. That evening, as she walked to her car, Richard was waiting by the entrance. "How did it go?" he asked casually, though his eyes gleamed. Maya couldn't hold back her smile. "They loved it. I knew they would," Richard said, pride clear in his voice. "You were born for this." Over the following weeks, Maya's reputation grew. Newspapers stopped calling her a lucky beggar and began referring to her as the rising star of Roberts & Company. Clients requested her on projects. Employees who had once sneered now approached her for advice. Richard often checked in on her. Some afternoons, he would appear at her office door with takeout bags. "You've been in here all day," he would say. "Come eat." They would sit together eating jollof rice and fried chicken, laughing at small jokes. On weekends, he invited her to join him at art exhibitions or architectural tours. Maya hesitated at first, worried about gossip, but Richard always reassured her. "Let people talk," he said once as they walked through a sculpture garden. "You can't stop them. Focus on the life you're building." Maya admired his calmness. He carried himself like a man who had nothing to prove to anyone. Around him, she felt safe. But outside their bubble, shadows were gathering. One evening, as Maya scrolled through her phone after dinner, her heart nearly stopped. A message from an unknown number flashed on her screen. "Hello, Maya. It's been a long time." Her fingers trembled. She knew that voice in her head even before she read the next line. "It's David." Her stomach turned. She stared at the message, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The man who had destroyed her life, who had abandoned her when she needed him most. Why was he reaching out now? The phone rang. The same unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Maya." David's smooth, familiar voice filled her ear. "I've missed you." She froze. "What do you want?" she asked coldly. "Don't be like that," David said lightly. "I heard the news. Look at you, all successful now. Living in a fine house, driving cars, working with a billionaire. I'm proud of you, Maya. Really." Her grip on the phone tightened. "Don't lie. You're not proud of me. You're after something." David chuckled. "Ah, Maya, you know me too well. Of course I'm after something. You're carrying my baby after all. You didn't think you'd enjoy all that luxury alone, did you?" Her chest tightened. Her hand flew to her belly instinctively, even though the baby hadn't been born yet. This is my baby. You lost the right to call yourself the father the day you threw me out. Maya, he said softly, almost mockingly. Don't talk like that. I'm coming back into your life, whether you like it or not. She hung up before he could say more, her whole body shaking. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, hugging her knees, replaying his words. She wanted to run, but where would she go? She wanted to scream, but only silence filled the room. The next morning, she told Richard during one of his visits. He called me, she whispered, staring at her hands. David. He says he wants back into my life. Richard's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, his voice steady. What did he say exactly? She repeated the conversation. Richard's eyes darkened. I know men like David. Opportunists. They crawl back when they smell money. Don't let him scare you. I won't let him. Maya wanted to believe him. She nodded, though her heart was still heavy. The next day, as she dressed for work, she opened her door and froze. David was sitting on her front step. Her breath caught. David, how did you find me? He smirked, standing slowly. Did you think you could hide? This is my baby, Maya, my stake in your life. You can't shut me out. She shook her head, anger and fear mixing in her chest. You have no right. You lost that long ago. They argued. David's voice grew louder, demanding. Maya finally pushed past him and got into her car. She refused to let him see her break. But the image of him sitting there haunted her all through the morning meeting. She barely heard her colleagues. She made mistakes in her presentation. People glanced at her strangely. After the meeting, Richard called her into his office. What's wrong? You're not yourself today. She hesitated, then sighed. David. He was at my house this morning. Richard's calm facade cracked. His eyes blazed with fury. He showed up at your home? Yes, Maya whispered. He says he wants the baby. He says he has a right to my life. Richard stood abruptly, grabbing his car keys. I'm driving you home. If he's there, he'll answer to me. Maya followed silently, her heart pounding. For the first time since she had met Richard, she saw him angry. Not the quiet, composed billionaire, but a man ready to fight for her. And deep inside her, beneath the fear, a tiny spark of warmth flickered. Richard drove fast but steady, eyes fixed on the road, jaw clenched. Maya sat beside him, fingers twisting around each other. The city passed in a blur. Street stalls, Okada riders, blinking traffic lights. None of it settled her heart. She kept seeing David on her doorstep, the same smirk she knew too well. When they reached her street, Richard slowed down and scanned both sides of the road. Stay in the car, he said quietly. If he's here, I'll handle it. Maya nodded. But when they pulled up in front of the bungalow, the step was empty. No David. No one lurking behind the shrubs. Only the evening sound of children laughing 2 houses away and a radio playing somewhere down the street. Richard parked and got out first. He checked the compound, the backyard, the side path. Everything was quiet. He came back to the car and opened Maya's door. He's not here. Her shoulders loosened a little, but the fear did not leave. He will come back, she whispered. Richard met her eyes. Then I'll be here when he does. She hesitated. You shouldn't, you're very busy. I can manage. No, he said simply. You don't have to go through this alone. He helped her carry 2 small bags inside. Even though there was nothing heavy in them, she moved slowly. Her due date was near, and some days the baby made her breath short. Richard noticed and guided her to the sofa. I'll make tea, he said, moving toward the kitchen like he had lived here for years. Maya smiled faintly at the sight of him opening cupboards, searching for sugar and cups. He looked out of place in his crisp shirt and expensive watch, but he was careful with everything, gentle with every clink of porcelain. They sat together with warm mugs in their hands. Silence settled, but it was a calm silence, the kind that made the walls feel safe again. Thank you, Maya said, for staying. Richard took a sip and shrugged. You don't have to thank me for common sense. Then softer. You've done so well, Maya. Don't let him steal your peace. They talked for a while about normal things, about the library project, about a client who wanted a rooftop garden, about the small plant Maya had placed by the window and named Hope. The hours drifted. The sky turned dark and the neighborhood quieted. When Maya stood to stretch, a small pain tugged at her lower back. She winced and pressed a hand against it. "Are you okay?" Richard asked immediately. "Yes," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just the usual." "Let me stay the night," he said. "I'll sleep on the couch. If he returns, I'll be here." Maya wanted to protest, but the truth was simple. She felt safe with him there. She nodded. "Okay." Richard locked the doors and checked the windows again. He laid a blanket on the couch and insisted she take the bed. She fell asleep listening to the light sound of him moving in the sitting room and the stronger sound of her own heartbeat calming down. The morning came soft and pale. Richard woke before dawn as he usually did. He stood by the window and watched the sky brighten, then moved to the kitchen. He found eggs, bread, a tin of milk, and a few tomatoes. Soon, the house filled with the smell of frying eggs and butter on hot pan. Maya walked in, hair tied back, face still sleepy, and stopped at the doorway. "You're cooking." Richard, holding a wooden spoon like it was a technical tool, smiled without turning. "Architects can cook breakfast. It's in the training manual." She laughed, surprised both of them. He turned, set 2 plates on the small dining table, and pulled out a chair for her. They ate slowly, like people who had found something normal in the middle of a storm. For a few minutes, Maya forgot David. She forgot fear. She remembered only that she was alive, in a home that did not leak, with someone who did not hurt her. "Thank you," she said again when they were done. "For this, for everything." "Eat more," he replied, sliding an extra toast to her plate. "You're eating for 2. The knock came while she was reaching for her cup. 3 loud knocks, sharp, impatient. Maya's hand froze halfway. She looked at Richard. His eyes hardened. He stood and went to the door. When he opened it, David filled the frame like a bad memory that refused to fade. He wore a pressed shirt and dark trousers, like he was going to an office that did not exist. His mouth curved into a smile that never reached his eyes. "If it isn't the charitable billionaire," David said, voice dripping with mock sweetness. "How's your new pet?" "Leave," Richard said quietly. "You're not welcome here." Maya heard his voice and came to the doorway. Her breath caught. "David." He tilted his head. "Ah, the mother of my child." He pointed at her belly. "Remember? That is mine." Maya's hands curled into fists at her sides. "This baby will never know you as her father." David's eyes flashed. "We'll see." He took a step forward, but Richard moved in front of him, blocking the way with calm strength. "Do not come near this house again," Richard said, voice low and even. "If you do, I will have you arrested." David laughed, short and ugly. "Arrest me? For what? For greeting the mother of my child? Be a man. Don't hide behind police and big grammar. Throw me out yourself." He spread his arms, daring. Richard's eyes didn't leave his. "One last warning." David's smile snapped. He looked past Richard and aimed his words like stones at Maya. "You think you're safe? Because you have a rich man cooking eggs in your kitchen? You think all this will last?" He jabbed a finger toward her belly. "That is still my blood." "Leave," Richard repeated. David's gaze cut back to Maya. Anger twisted his mouth. He moved suddenly, brushing past Richard's shoulder and crowding the doorway. "You will regret this." Maya stepped forward and stood tall, even with her fear. "Get out of my house, David." He shoved her. It wasn't a heavy push, but she wasn't steady on her feet. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on the edge of the rug. She fell onto the tiled floor with a soft cry. Everything in Richard's face changed. The restraint left. The training entered. He moved fast. Not wild, not messy. Focused. He grabbed David's wrist mid-swing, twisted, and drove him back with 2 clean strikes. One to the shoulder to break balance, one to the ribs to empty breath. David lunged with anger, not skill. Richard sidestepped, hooked a foot behind David's ankle, and swept. David crashed into the doorframe, cursing. He came again, swinging. Richard blocked, stepped in, and drove a short punch into David's chest, pushing him out into the compound. "Enough," Richard said, voice like steel. "Leave. Now." David stared, panting, eyes wide at the power he had not expected. He spat on the ground, his pride bleeding more than his lip. "You haven't seen the last of me." He backed away, then turned and ran, hurling words over his shoulder. "I'll be back." Richard watched him go only long enough to be sure he was truly leaving, then spun around and hurried to Maya. She was half sitting, half lying on the tile, her face pale. One hand held her belly. The other reached for him. "Richard," she whispered, breath shallow. "Something is wrong." He knelt beside her. "Where does it hurt?" "A tight pain. Then it stops. Then it comes again," she said, voice shaking. Another wave seized her and she winced. "It's closer now." Richard's heart jumped. Contractions. Her eyes met his. A small, frightened nod. He didn't waste a second. He grabbed a clean blanket from the couch, wrapped it around her shoulders, and lifted her gently. "We're going to the hospital." He carried her to the car and laid the seat back. "Breathe with me," he said as he fastened the belt across her. "In 2, 3, out, 2, 3. She tried to match him. The next contraction hit and she squeezed his hand hard enough to hurt, but he did not let go. He shut the front door, locked it, and ran around to the driver's side. The engine roared. He drove with precision. Fast but careful, hands steady on the wheel, eyes on the road and the side mirror, mind counting distances like drawings on a plan. "You're doing well," he said. "We're almost there. Keep breathing. In 2, 3, out, 2, 3. Maya tried to focus on his voice. The world blurred with pain and fear and then strange calm. Between the waves, she saw his profile, strong and set, and felt her panic ease. He was here. She was not alone. They reached the hospital. Nurses rushed forward with a wheelchair as soon as Richard shouted for help. "She's in labor," he said, already lifting Maya out of the car. "Please, take care of her." The nurses took over, gentle but quick. A midwife asked questions. Maya answered between breaths. Someone placed a cuff on her arm. Someone else checked the baby's heartbeat. The sound filled the room. Fast, strong, steady. Maya began to cry. Relief, fear, hope. All of it at once. "You're okay," the midwife said, smiling. "Your baby is okay. It's time." They wheeled her toward the delivery room. Richard started to follow, then stopped at the nurse's firm hand. "Sir, you can wait outside." He nodded, swallowing the urge to argue. He squeezed Maya's hand before they separated. "I'm here," he said. "I'm right here." The door closed. Time changed shape in the white corridor. Seconds felt like hours. Richard paced, sat, stood, paced again. He wiped blood, David's, from his knuckles with a tissue, then noticed and tossed it away. He scrubbed his hands in the restroom until the sting of soap pulled him back into his body. He sent a message to the head of security at Roberts & Company, short and direct. "I need eyes on a man named David. Full name to follow. Do it quietly." Then he waited. Inside, Maya pushed through pain she could not name. She gripped the bed rail, shook, prayed. The midwife's voice was a rope she could hold. "You are strong," the woman kept saying. "You can do this. One more push. That's it." Again. Maya thought of the street and the nights under the bridge. She thought of the rain that soaked her clothes and the hunger that gnawed her bones. She thought of the day an air hostess had looked at her like dirt, and the moment a stranger's voice had cut through the noise to say, "Wait." She thought of drawings on torn paper and a plant on a windowsill named Hope. She pushed. A cry burst into the room. Fierce, high, perfect. The midwife laughed, full and bright. "A girl." Maya broke into tears that felt like light. The midwife placed a small, warm bundle on her chest. Maya looked down and saw a face, red and wrinkled and beautiful, 2 eyes squeezed tight, a tiny mouth opening to declare her arrival to the world. "Hello?" Maya whispered, voice shaking with joy. "Hello, my love." The baby settled like she knew the voice. A nurse cleaned Maya's forehead and adjusted the blanket. The midwife's hand squeezed her shoulder. "You did well, Mama." Later, when everything was calm and the baby had been checked and wrapped again, a nurse opened the door and signaled. Richard entered quietly, as if stepping into a sacred place. He stopped at the foot of the bed and simply stared. The fight gone from him, the power gone too. Only wonder remained. Maya looked up at him, eyes shining. "Meet our little miracle," she said softly, then laughed at herself. "I mean, my miracle." Richard moved closer, slow, careful. The baby made a small sound like a sigh. He reached out, then paused, seeking permission with his eyes. "Go on," Maya whispered. He slid his hands under the tiny body and lifted her. His face changed again, softened in a way Maya had never seen. He stared at the small fingers, the small mouth, the newness of it all. He smiled, and it was not the smile of a billionaire who had won another deal. It was the smile of a man who had been allowed to hold a sunrise. "She's perfect," he said, barely breathing the words. He handed the baby back reluctantly, then bent and kissed Maya's forehead. The kiss was gentle, grateful, promise made without words. "Thank you for being brave," he whispered. "Thank you for fighting." Maya closed her eyes. For the first time in a very long time she felt completely safe. The storm had not ended, storms never really ended. But she had crossed something. A line, a night, a sea. She had entered morning. Outside, the city moved on. Cars honked, traders called out prices. Life pushed forward. Inside the bright room, a new life breathed softly against her chest. And a man who had once been a stranger stood watch like a lighthouse. Whatever waited beyond this day, whatever David still planned, whatever fear still tried to rise, Maya knew one thing. She was not the same woman who had sat on a cold airport chair, clutching a nylon bag. She was a mother. She was an architect. She was alive. And she was not alone. The days after the birth felt like a dream wrapped in fragile paper. Maya returned home from the hospital with her daughter in her arms. Richard beside her every step. The little girl was tiny, her cry soft, her eyes still adjusting to the brightness of the world. Maya named her Amara, Grace, because the child was nothing short of grace made flesh. When they carried Amara into the bungalow for the first time, Maya stood in the living room and whispered, "Welcome home, my baby." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she kissed the child's forehead. Richard stayed close, helping to unpack, checking the locks on the doors again, making sure the windows were secure. "Everything has to be safe," he muttered more than once, as if repeating it would make it so. In the following days, he visited almost every evening. He brought food, sometimes cooked by him, sometimes from fancy restaurants. He held the baby gently, never rushing, always asking permission with his eyes before taking her into his arms. When Amara fussed, he rocked her slowly, murmuring to her in low tones that always seemed to calm her down. Maya often stood in the doorway and watched them, her chest tightening with emotions she couldn't name. Gratitude, relief, maybe something deeper. One evening, as the three of them sat at the dining table, Maya laughed for the first time since she could remember. She had tried to help Richard cook, insisting she could manage even though she was still healing, and he had teased her about nearly burning the stew. For a moment it felt like family. But shadows are never far from light. The seventh night after returning home began peacefully. Maya had bathed Amara, dressed her in a soft onesie, and laid her in the crib by the bed. Richard had left an hour earlier, promising to come back in the morning with supplies. The house was quiet. A fan hummed softly. Outside, crickets sang. Maya drifted to sleep, exhaustion wrapping around her. She did not hear the soft scrape of a window being pried open. She did not hear the cautious steps across the tiled floor. She did not see the shadowed figure that moved with purpose toward the crib. Only when the night silence grew strange did she stir. She turned on the bed and reached instinctively toward the crib, empty. Her heart slammed against her chest. Her eyes flew open. "Amara?" she whispered. She sat up quickly, fumbling for the light switch. The crib was bare. Her scream tore through the house. "My baby! Amara! No!" She stumbled to the living room, then the kitchen, calling her baby's name as if the child could answer. Every room echoed with emptiness. The window in the sitting room was ajar, the curtain fluttering. Her legs gave way. She fell to the floor, sobbing, clutching her chest. The world tilted. Through her tears, she managed to grab her phone. Her fingers shook so violently she could barely press the numbers. She called the one person she trusted. "Richard," she cried when he answered. "She's gone. They took my baby. I'm on my way," he said, no questions asked, his voice sharp with urgency. Minutes felt like hours. Maya paced the house, screaming, praying, collapsing in tears, rising again. When Richard finally burst through the door, she ran to him like a drowning woman clutching a lifeline. "They took her," she gasped, clutching his shirt. The crib was empty. The window was open. "Richard, they took Amara." He pulled her close, steadying her. "We'll find her," he said firmly. "I promise you we'll find her." He called someone immediately, a police inspector he clearly knew well. Within an hour, officers arrived, their uniforms dark against the night. They asked questions gently, their notebooks open. Maya tried to answer, but her voice cracked. "When did you last see the baby?" "Just before I slept," she whispered. She was in the crib. Did you hear anything? Notice anyone? No, no. She broke down again, her whole body trembling. It's my fault. I should have stayed awake. I should have. Maya, stop. Richard cut in, his voice calm but firm. He held her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. This is not your fault. Do you hear me? This is not your fault. The inspector nodded. We will do everything within our power to find your baby. For now, try to remember the smallest detail. Anything unusual today? Maya closed her eyes, thinking. Then it came to her. David. Richard's jaw clenched. It could be him, she whispered. He said he would be back. He said the baby was his. Richard turned to the inspector. Then start with him. The investigation moved quickly. By evening the next day, the inspector called Richard. A street camera near Maya's neighborhood had captured David, cradling a baby in his arms, heading toward downtown. Maya nearly collapsed when she heard. It's him, she whispered, clutching her stomach as if she could still feel the child there. That same night, Maya's phone rang. The caller ID was unknown. Her hands shook as she answered. Maya. David's voice slid into her ear, oily and smug. If you want to see the baby again, you'll pay. Her breath caught. David, please. $10 million. He interrupted coldly. Or you'll never see her again. Tears streamed down her face. I don't have that kind of money. You don't, he said, chuckling. But your billionaire does. Tell him to bring it. Or say goodbye to your daughter. The line went dead. Maya dropped the phone, her sobs filling the room. Richard was beside her in an instant, pulling her into his arms. Shoo, we'll get her back. They'll hurt her. Maya choked out. He'll hurt her. Richard cupped her face, his voice steady. Listen to me. He won't. The police are already tracking his call. We'll find him. We'll get Amara back. The inspector nodded from across the room. His team had already set up equipment, their laptops glowing. We're on him. We'll trace every call, every signal. He won't escape. But Richard saw the fear in Maya's eyes, and deep inside, his own anger burned like fire. He had built skyscrapers, negotiated million-dollar deals, and outsmarted competitors his whole career. But nothing had ever felt as urgent, as personal as this. David had touched what he shouldn't have, and Richard would not rest until Amara was safe in Maya's arms again. That night stretched endlessly. Maya sat on the sofa, clutching Amara's small blanket to her chest, inhaling the fading baby scent. Richard stayed beside her, never leaving, answering every call from the police with sharp questions. You're not sleeping? Maya whispered once, looking at him through swollen eyes. I will sleep when Amara is home, he replied simply. She pressed her face into the blanket and wept again. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere in the city, her baby cried for her mother, and Maya vowed through her tears. No matter what it cost, she would fight until her child was safe again. The hours after David's ransom call felt like walking through a storm with no umbrella. Maya sat in her living room, her arms wrapped around Amara's blanket, rocking back and forth as if motion alone could bring her child back. Richard never left her side, his phone glued to his hand, his eyes sharp and restless. The police inspector and 2 officers worked quietly in the background, their laptops open, radios crackling now and then. Every tick of the clock stabbed deeper into Maya's heart. When the inspector's phone finally rang, the room went silent. He answered quickly, listened, then swore under his breath. We traced the call to an alley downtown. But when we got there, the phone was in a dumpster. He knew we were tracking him. Maya's chest tightened. No, no, please. Richard stepped forward. What else did you find? The inspector held up a plastic bag. Inside it, a crumpled note. He read aloud. Get my 10 million. Maya buried her face in her hands. He's playing games with us. Richard's voice hardened. He wants to break her spirit. He won't succeed. 2 hours later, another call came. This time David had slipped. He had used his own card to book a motel room on the outskirts of the city. The police didn't waste a second. We move now, the inspector ordered. Richard grabbed his jacket. We're coming too. Maya's first instinct was to say no, but she couldn't sit at home while strangers went after her child. I'm coming, she said firmly. The convoy of police cars and Richard's SUV cut through the night, sirens muted but lights flashing. The city blurred past. Shuttered shops, sleeping houses, a few night owls walking aimlessly under yellow street lamps. Maya sat in the back seat, clutching the baby blanket, whispering prayers under her breath. Please, God, please let her be alive. Please let me hold her again. The motel appeared at last. A rundown building with flickering neon lights, the kind of place no one wanted to admit they visited. Officers surrounded it silently, guns drawn. The inspector gave hand signals. 2 officers slipped in through the back while others prepared to storm the front. Richard squeezed Maya's hand. Stay here. She nodded, her chest heaving. Then the inspector signaled. The door burst open. Shouts filled the air. Police! Hands up! Maya strained to see through the windshield. Moments later, 2 officers dragged David out in handcuffs. His shirt was half-buttoned, his hair messy, his mouth twisted in a bitter smile. You'll never find her, he shouted, laughing madly. You'll never see that child again. Maya's heart dropped. She stumbled out of the car, her knees weak. Where is she, David? Where's my baby? He sneered. Wouldn't you like to know? The inspector slammed him against the hood of a car. Where's the baby? Answer. But David only laughed harder. You can beat me, lock me, kill me. You'll never find her. She's gone. Maya collapsed against Richard's chest, sobbing. Richard held her tightly, his eyes burning with fury. You monster, he muttered under his breath. The police searched every inch of the motel. Under the beds, in the cupboards, even in the basement. But Amara was nowhere. The inspector shook his head grimly. He handed her off. He's not working alone. At the station, David sat in an interrogation room, smirking. Maya watched him through the glass, trembling with rage and fear. He's enjoying this, she whispered. Richard's hand rested on her back. He won't win. Hours dragged by with no progress. Then, just as dawn painted the horizon gray, Maya's phone rang. She picked it up with shaking hands. A woman's voice, soft but urgent, spoke. Maya. Yes, this is Maya. Who are you? Where is my baby? I have her, the woman said, her voice breaking. I'm David's friend. He left the baby with me. But I can't do this. I'm a mother too. I can't stand by while he tears another woman apart. Please come. Take your child. Maya's knees nearly gave way. Where are you? The woman gave an address. A small flat across town. Richard was already on his feet, signaling the inspector. We move. Now. The drive felt endless, though it was less than 30 minutes. When they arrived, a tired-looking young woman opened the door. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hands trembling. She's inside, she whispered. Maya rushed past her into the living room and froze. There, in a small cot, lay Amara, sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling, her fist curled against her cheek. A sound burst from Maya's chest. Half sob, half laugh. She ran forward and scooped her daughter into her arms, pressing kiss after kiss onto her face. My baby, my baby, my baby. Tears streamed down her cheeks as Amara stirred, yawned, and began to cry softly. Maya held her close, rocking her, whispering, It's okay now. Mommy's here. You're safe. Richard stood in the doorway, his eyes wet, watching them. His chest loosened for the first time since that terrible night. The young woman wrung her hands, her voice low. I didn't know he would go this far. I thought he was just angry. But when he brought the baby, I knew it was wrong. I'm sorry, Maya. Please believe me. I never wanted to hurt you. Maya, still clutching Amara, looked at her through tears. You did the right thing. That's what matters. The inspector nodded firmly. You'll testify against him? The woman nodded. Yes, he deserves to pay. Back at the station, David's smirk finally cracked when he learned Amara was safe. He roared with rage, cursing the woman who had betrayed him. But his fury only sealed his fate. The inspector had all the evidence he needed. Within days, David was charged with kidnapping, extortion, and assault. Maya sat in the courtroom weeks later, Amara cradled in her arms, Richard at her side. She listened as the judge declared, David Okoro, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison. The gavel struck. Maya exhaled a breath she felt she had been holding since the night her baby was taken. She looked at Richard, and he looked back with a small smile, steady and warm. The evening after the sentencing, Maya stood on her porch, the cool breeze brushing against her face. Amara slept inside, her soft breaths audible through the baby monitor Richard had insisted on buying. Richard joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one. It's over now, he said softly. She nodded. Yes, at least for now. They stood in silence, sipping, watching the streetlights flicker on. After a while, Richard turned to her. Maya, I don't want you to go through this alone anymore. Move in with me. My house is safer, and I can protect both of you better there. Her eyes widened. Richard. He raised a hand gently. No pressure. But think about it. You and Amara deserve peace. And I'd like to give you that. Maya's throat tightened. She looked at the man who had rescued her from an airport humiliation, who had fought for her, who had held her baby like she was his own. Maybe fate had been cruel once, but maybe, just maybe, it had given her a second chance in the shape of this man. She didn't answer yet, but she didn't say no. Inside the house, Amara stirred, letting out a soft cry. Maya excused herself and went to pick her up. She pressed her daughter to her chest and whispered, "You're safe now, my love. Mommy's here, and we're going to be okay." And for the first time, she truly believed it. The day after David's sentencing, peace returned to Maya's home for the first time in months. The air felt lighter, as though the house itself could breathe again. Amara slept soundly in her crib, unaware of the battles her mother had fought to keep her safe. That evening, Richard stopped by as he always did. He carried a small bag of groceries in one hand and a bouquet of fresh flowers in the other. "For you," he said, handing her the flowers with a small smile. Maya took them, her cheeks warming. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he replied simply. After dinner, when Amara had been fed and tucked in, they stepped out onto the porch. The night was clear, the stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. The street was quiet except for the distant sound of crickets. They stood side by side, silent for a while, gazing upward. Maya folded her arms against the chill of the evening breeze, and Richard noticed. Without a word, he shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling it tighter. He nodded, his eyes still on the stars. "Beautiful night." "Yes," she said softly, though her gaze had shifted to him. The silence stretched, not awkward but full of something unspoken. Maya felt her heart racing in her chest. For weeks she had leaned on Richard, for strength, for safety, for comfort. But tonight, standing under the stars, she realized how much more he had become to her. He was not just her protector, not just her benefactor. He was the man who had seen her worth when the world had called her worthless. When Richard finally turned his head, their eyes met. He didn't speak. He simply stepped a little closer, his hand brushing hers. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her. "Maya," he said quietly, "I don't want to rush you, but I need you to know. I care for you, deeply." Her breath caught. The words she had been afraid to admit even to herself suddenly filled the air between them. She took a small step closer, her eyes searching his. "I care for you too, Richard," she whispered. The world seemed to pause. Slowly, gently, he leaned in. Maya's heart thundered as she closed her eyes, and then his lips met hers. The kiss was soft, unhurried, yet it carried all the emotions they had both held back. Gratitude, admiration, longing, and a promise of something new. When they pulled back, Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That was perfect," Richard finished for her, smiling. She nodded, her heart full. Months passed, and their bond only grew stronger. Richard spent more time at the bungalow, though eventually Maya agreed to move into his larger, more secure home. There, Amara had a nursery filled with warmth and color, and Maya had space to breathe and create. Together, they balanced work and home. They cooked meals side by side, argued playfully over designs, and spent quiet evenings walking in the garden. Richard adored Amara, often cradling her to sleep when Maya was too tired, or making silly faces just to hear her laugh. It wasn't long before whispers in the office grew louder. The boss and the new architect. But Maya didn't care anymore. For once in her life, she was happy, and nothing could take that away. One evening, nearly a year after their first meeting at the airport, Richard invited Maya to a private dinner at the rooftop of one of his newest buildings. The view of the city stretched endlessly, the lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. A violinist played softly in the corner, and the table was lit by candles. Maya, dressed in an elegant gown Richard had picked for her, felt like she was living in a dream. Halfway through the evening, Richard stood. He walked to her side, knelt on one knee, and opened a small velvet box. Inside, a diamond ring sparkled like the very stars they had kissed beneath. "Maya Johnson," he said, his voice steady though his eyes glowed with emotion. You walked into my life when I least expected it. You reminded me of why I fell in love with architecture, because it's about building something lasting, something beautiful. I want to build forever with you. Will you marry me? Maya gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears spilled over her cheeks as she nodded quickly. Yes, yes, Richard. I will. The violinist's music swelled as Richard slipped the ring onto her finger. She pulled him up and kissed him, the city lights blazing around them. Their wedding was small but elegant. Close friends, colleagues, and family filled the hall. Maya wore a simple white gown that flowed like water, her hair pinned back, her smile radiant. Richard, in a tailored suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. When the vows were spoken, Maya's voice trembled. From the day you saw me at the airport, you have been my miracle. You gave me hope, you gave me love, and you gave me a family. I promise to love you with all that I am, for all of my days. Richard's eyes glistened as he replied, You walked into my life with nothing but your courage and your dreams. And in you, I found everything I had ever wanted. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, and to walk beside you always. They sealed their vows with a kiss, this one deeper, fuller, carrying all the storms they had survived together. And as the guests clapped and cheered, Maya looked down at her ring, then at the baby sleeping in her mother's arms, and finally at Richard's smiling face. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was living loved, secure, and free. It was truly the perfect beginning. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.